Prison Paradise is the documentary of Merida Prison, a prison located in Venezuela, South America. The shooting took place in 1999 with the collaboration of Radford University Criminal Justice Department and Multimedia Center.
I like to think of making a documentary as sort of like being a painting, only maybe more of a storytelling type painting. It's certainly not a still life. It's something that is rich, that there's something happening, it's eventful. Documentary film, you get to be creative from the moment you start shooting to the last moment when you finish shooting. A lot of people think that the documentary is just sort of setting up a camera and letting life kind of go into the lens, you know, cinema verite. And that's not the way modern documentaries are made. The way documentaries are made now is that you investigate something, you get very good knowledge of something, and then you start thinking about how we could make this into a story. Remember that television is not radio with pictures. It's multimedia. It's pictures and audio and music, moving images, still images, all mixed together to create something that is maybe an entity above it.
The idea is the first element of relevance. With the simplicity of a story, a documentary might talk about anything while being interesting and accurate as well.
Jordan came into my office and said, "Phil, listen, I heard you're in town. Can we go down to Venezuela to shoot a documentary?" And of course I started thinking, oh, hey, let's go to South America.
The idea of Prison Paradise was to show the extraordinary lives of Merida Prison with the intent of giving another angle to the prisoners' lives.
But I didn't know what I was getting myself into, because this is a great story. Men, women, children, families, all living in a prison. And they call it paradise.
Real people and determinate stories are often the secret of a documentary.
Pre-production, production, and post-production are the three major steps that you have to categorize your thought process, your creative process.
Prison Paradise planning guaranteed a solid production in the field.
Pre-production, you have the script writing, all the planning, all the list making, getting the people together, getting the location together, equipment. In the shooting days, which is the part that almost everybody seems to like the most, and they do the most, and put the most energy into, that's getting everybody together and spending those 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months to create, to shoot. And then in post-production is you sit down at the computer and you find yourself editing all of the footage that you shot.
It's not easy traveling internationally. Somewhere in the United States or more popular places perhaps like Europe, it's real simple. You can get there in one day. Here, there's absolutely no way to get to where we need to be without having layovers, and delays are absolutely a guarantee.
It's essential that everybody understand that you're going into another country. It's not free. You're going to have permission before you bring anything into the country and do some work.
The script is fundamental. It's a blueprint of the production and clarifies the vision of the project.
In a documentary, unlike Hollywood, the script is not set in stone.
In Venezuela, the script of Prison Paradise was the first to be modified. The outbreak of news stories was offering more interesting topics.
What we think about when we're there investigating the story, has to be turned into some sort of narrative that starts to make sense in a 20 to 50 minute piece. We could have just set up the camera and just let everybody ramble on and ramble on and ramble on. But I don't think that we'd be able to piece together all the stories without some sort of script writing effort.
Planning the budget and establishing financial sponsors represents the concrete beginning of a project.
No film, Hollywood or a documentary or even a home video nowadays, is inexpensive.
Without money, even the best idea can't be transformed into a video.
You have to have food. You have to be prepared for that. You have to feed 10 people one day, 8 people another day, 11 people another day. You have to be prepared for the agreement that you make with the local restaurant provider, food provider. That's going to happen. Sometimes that doesn't happen.
From getting the money, getting the permission, make sure the team's together. Did we have tapes? Can we get anything into the country? Everything had to be pre-thought of.
Water. You've got to have water. You've got to have throat lozenges. You've got to have medicines. You have to have alcohol, rubbing alcohol in case of scratches for infection.
There's still photographers, scripts, gaffers, lights, connections with the university, translation, transcription.
You got to have extra toilet paper in case there's diarrhea. You have to have stomach medicine. Detail, detail, detail.
Lighting for the interviews that we were going to conduct with both the staff and the prisoners there.
When you're in another country, you can't just run down to the local pharmacy or your doctor. And we had people who got sick, partially, I think, some from the water, some had headaches, just various different illnesses.
In many places, you're dealing with 220 volts. There's all different kinds of plug sizes. There are round pins and straight pins and all kinds of other things that are not common plugs to the United States.
And if you ever leave anything out from a pre-production plan, then the production itself will suffer.
And the scenery of murderers, thieves, and drug dealers, it was hard to define what people Phil would have to talk with. Interviews were the real core of the production. You only get one chance to conduct an interview. You must make it count.
My biggest fear when I went to film Prison Paradise was to go in and have to shake hands with someone who killed someone, or shake hands with someone who's a drug dealer, sit in a room all alone with no guards, and interview them and ask them to tell the story about their life. I was pleasantly surprised. I was very surprised that when I came in, when we brought in the people into the interview room and I shook hands with them, they genuinely looked right at me and said, "It's nice to meet you." So I had to throw away those fears. I had to throw away those fears, and the prisoners had to throw away their fears as well, and when that happened, we had a good interview.
An interview is only as good as it sounds. If your audio levels aren't set properly, the mics aren't in proper place, and you can't hear the words, you've wasted your time.
We had a lot of complications with audio. I brought down four handheld microphones and 2 lavalier microphones. We used almost always the lavalier microphones because we were in interview situations. Every time I'm listening to the microphone, I have a headphone on. People always forget this.
One of the biggest problems, or one of the biggest issues that we had that we needed to check out ahead of time was issues of power, lighting and whatnot. Obviously, when you go into a big cement block building like a prison, it's pretty dark.
Setting the lights can make or break your project. You have to pay attention to this important task.
And then this other light can be a backlight, so it's going to be coming down.
What went wrong today?
What went wrong today? The interviewer let the guy just go on and on and on and on, and suddenly we were just, talking about things we didn't, they weren't so important.
Interviews followed very quickly. More than 15 people came to talk in front of the cameras. Interviews were not a matter of how many people they were able to see, but rather how effective their questions and answers were. On the other hand, many times the interviewee will represent the biggest problems.
This guy was fearful, man. This guy thought he was
I got the idea.
on the wrong, he thought he was on the wrong TV show.
They may fear being on camera and refuse to answer specific questions.
So that's where we're at right now. You know, you plan one day, you think you've got an interview, and then all of a sudden at the last minute, like anybody, they discover they're going to be on camera, they get nervous and decide not to participate.
Is there anything important you can think of to turn off before you go into an interview?
Cellular phones, alarms, clock alarms, anything that could be an agenda, like my agenda does it, and anything that could fall out of your pockets, like keys, coins, and be careful with the candy paper, and even with the sheets of the book. When you turn the page, you have to be careful because it gets noisy sometimes, and we're really close to the microphone of the camera.
For making a documentary, organization is a key factor, as well as getting in contact with each other.
Our primary form of communication was telephone while we were doing the shoot. I would be in one location setting up the future shot, and the director would be shooting the existing shot. So phones were absolutely critical. Every once in a while when we'd have silence on the set, we would communicate by note. But even before this, internet communication, email was absolutely critical.
In the documentary, the team is so small that every single person has a tremendous job, and they have to do it impeccably well.
Very few of us could speak anything except minimal amounts of Spanish to hail a taxi when we got here and whatnot. And so as a result, we really had to rely a lot in a foreign country with somebody who was fluent in both, in our case, Spanish and English. During the actual interview process, the same person that did the bilingual translation for us on the tape later kept a log during the process.
Keeping logs is a part of the organizational process that will make work back in the States much easier.
Here's the subject and what the actual question was. When start? When did the economy in the prison start? And that's enough for you to be able to say, I know what it is.
He wrote down in English, the gist of the conversation.
Then he says, 1967, two guys sell in town. That's enough. My job as the director was to really just take the team and make sure that it's infinitely clear what we're about to do.
The responsibility of the producers to make absolutely certain that the entire crew is completely taken care of. Absolutely everything has to be solved.
The assistant director is kind of a go-between, making sure that props are in place, if there's any technical problems, issues that need to be addressed that have come up, dealing with the producer to make sure that the producer is moving on and doing what's supposed to be taken care of in the future.
I'd always heard a production assistant did everything, but on this film I actually learned that you do everything from getting people's laundry, rigging up ways to fill water bottles, anything you could think of just to get the job done, because we're a small group of people and we only had 3 weeks to get an entire film shot.
When filming in a foreign country, it's necessary to get information on site from anybody at any time. You won't have a second chance to go back. Notes and informal conversations, together with pictures and sketches, are the best way to get those precious bits of real life. Also, music, posters, and brochures were items not to forget.
It's very rigorous. Especially the first week when we shot every day, we were shooting 14 hours a day basically, if you take out the downtime waiting for people to get ready and then taking time off to eat. but you think, oh yeah, we'll go out and shoot a little bit and have some extra time, but you wake up, you go shoot, and by the time you get home, you're tired, you don't feel like doing anything.
In any documentary, it's not only just about production. An interesting aspect of filming a documentary is that reality is the subject. There is no script with actors reciting.
Es difícil hacer el trabajo, ser el entrevistador de esta película, porque se trata de entrevistar a personas que están en condiciones realmente a veces muy malas, y se trata de buscar una conexión entre el entrevistador y el entrevistado. Y cuando el entrevistado es una persona que realmente está en condiciones, en muy malas condiciones, cuando está realmente afectado por la vida en la prisión, que está realmente mal, todas esas cosas vienen a formar parte de la conexión con el entrevistador. Entonces, explorar sobre los sentimientos de la gente siempre es algo sumamente duro, que uno no puede evitar que realmente lo afecte, porque me siento frustrado al final del trabajo, porque siento que uno indaga sobre lo que le pasa a la gente, indaga sobre lo que la gente es o sobre lo que la gente hace, pero nunca realmente uno puede hacer nada frente a esas situaciones. Entonces,
The crew needs to, at the end of the day, disband.
This is what your vision looks like after about 4 days of working with these guys, because you don't get any sleep.
They can't just hang out together all day and all night and all day and all night for 20 days. That will drive everyone crazy.
Seems to be very aggressive. Oh, you better watch out for them.
They want their bananas. If they don't get their bananas, they become aggressive.
So at the end of the evening, everybody should have a place to go be by themselves or go do what they need to do.
Puff the magic dragon.
Taking breaks between shootings, a refreshing beer after a long day, parties and dances are all secrets you may consider to keep your crew happy.
Together they
It was actually quite amazing to me how quickly that the team came together. We sat down and had the meeting, and I had some preconceptions of how things were actually going to work, because these people knew these people and we didn't really know each other, and a lot of us that were doing this didn't have an idea of what we were doing like a film student really should. But the first day we got there, we had some quick lessons on how to do things, and we came together really quickly.
A good production relies on how much a group can understand each other when situations are the most difficult.
They still developed a shorthand way of communicating and a synergy that was a wonder to behold, which made everything get easier as we were putting together the interviews and pulling the information.
This is Francisco and your girlfriend.
I expected myself to learn Spanish. When we're making an international film, you should have some, at least, remote idea what the language is.
The adventure in the land of Venezuela took 21 days for its realization. The target was reached, and the editing team encountered little difficulties during the post-production process.
Post-production is, generally speaking, about a third of the budget. Post-production of Prison Paradise took about a month, maybe 160 hours, that you're prepared as you go to sit down in a post-production facility. They cost between $100 and $170 an hour, and it will eat up a budget. It's probably going to be that good feeling you have that when you actually accomplish your work. We did the script, we wrote it, we did the shoot, everything is going so well. But I think the best compensation that I could have is that we sat down with a couple of beers and we got a guitar or two, friends, Fabricio, Alfredo, Ronaldo, Francisco.
Oh!
nothing to do with me.
Baby, don't you want to go to the bright light city, sweet old Chicago? Well, you love me in the morning and love me late at night. Love me in the morning and love me late at night. Well, I done got so I can't hardly bear you out of my sight. Oh, oh, baby, don't you want to go? Oh, baby, don't you want to go to that bright light city, sweet old
One of the most important directors, filmmaker in Venezuela, who is sí, que esto pueda pasar.
So what we've done is we've just taken the, it's just taken about 3/4 of a bottle of scotch to secure the lights for the first film, because we did not bring any lights and we thought we might have them from the school, from the college, from the university here. And the university was not going to supply them without, well, what looks like 3/4 of a bottle of scotch.
Oh, there's also... Hi, I'm Phil Lewis. I'm an important producer. I'm working on a documentary film in Venezuela. I have a big camera, and I like to go-go dancing.
Well, you love me in the morning and love me late at night. Told you about that thing. Yeah, you love me in the morning and love me late at night. Well, I done got so I can't hardly bear you out of my sight.